So before we get started today, I'd like to take a moment and say thank you to everyone who tuned in to the live Pokemon drinking game the other night. It was pretty chaotic, to say the least. I don't think there's any arguing otherwise, frankly. But we pulled through, and it turned out to still be a pretty amazing night. Maybe not as big as I had hoped it would be, but hey, I'm not a picky man. I'm happy that y'all tuned in, even if you tuned in for literally just one moment. Thank you very much for your patience, your understanding, and your undying support. Alright, enough of this fucking mushy-gushy crap. Let's talk about some fucking dark, heavy German thrash metal! I'm a pretty fucking healthy dude nowadays. I work out for sometimes up to 2 hours every other day of the week, running on the treadmill, lifting some weights. I eat lots of eggs and rice and salad and red meat. A buddy of mine last week joked that I was on some kind of military diet. And not to brag or anything, but if you look at this video and then look at a video I made, let's say, a year ago, you can visibly see that I've lost quite a bit of weight. But that aside, you know what I still love to eat every now and then? A fucking nasty, greasy American cheeseburger. And I'm not talking about no dinky, cheap-ass McDonald's garbage. I'm talking about a real fucking cheeseburger. I'm talking 2 homemade ground beef patties with melted cheese and candied bacon. I'm talking onion rings, lettuce, tomato, pickle with roasted garlic mayo and a pretzel bun. I'm talking hand-cut fries with gravy and cheese curds on the side. Not the kind of restaurant you'd get at a fast food joint, or a chain restaurant, or a shitty diner. The kind of sandwich you'd get at a fucking burger joint in Las Vegas. The kind of sandwich that you would make high out of your mind with your friends on the 4th of July. That is delicious, and I bring all this up because I think that is quintessentially who Sodom is as a band. They're nasty, they're greasy, they're kind of all over the place, and they're unapologetic in being all of those things. And as a result, not only are Sodom now masters at creating and crafting such consistently delicious material, but their new studio album, Genesis 19, stands out as perhaps one of their most delicious in a long time. Musically speaking, this is the exact same Sodom that we knew 10 years ago, that we knew 20 years ago, hell, that we knew 30 years ago. The same savage, cutthroat, almost punky German underground thrash that Sodom have consistently delivered, with just a wee bit of that super old school black metal spice still flowing through the band's veins. But that's not to say there aren't some significant changes made to Sodom on this album. For one, we're dealing with almost an entirely new lineup here, with Tony Merkel and York Sagatz on drums and guitar respectively, and returning guitarist Frank Blackfire, a gentleman who had previously worked with Sodom on records like Persecution Mania and their iconic Agent Orange, and went on to work with a number of other German thrash metal bands, including Assassin and Creator. And the result, in my opinion, is Sodom's strongest lineup yet. They feel revitalized, refreshed. I can very honestly say I don't think I've heard them quite this hungry or angry since their glory days, resulting in an album that is packed to the brim and almost overflowing with so many delicious and crushing fucking riffs. Take, for instance, on the nostalgic blackened speed metal fury of Sodom and Gomorrah, a loud, raucous, and rambunctious cut that wastes absolutely no fucking time whatsoever. Quite possibly the most energetic and hostile track on the album. Or, for instance, the album's title track, Genesis 19, an album that blends some very ominous, almost doomy grooves with some very extreme thrash metal pummeling. Most impressively, at 7 minutes long, even someone as nitpicky as myself can't really find a lot of unnecessary fat to trim here. A comment I can also apply to the track The Harpooner, a track which itself is almost overwhelmingly full of extremely volatile and heavy riffery. Although I'd have to say my favorite cuts on the record might be Dehumanized and Mich Meer Mein Land. The former because it embraces a kind of groove-laden darkness and brutality that I don't really think I've heard since the glory days of Slayer. And the latter of which because of its hefty, thick riffs that give this an almost hardcore kind of underbite. Later contrasted quite nicely with some very frantic, almost blackened death metal influence. I even find myself genuinely kind of enjoying sillier and more tongue-in-cheek moments on the record, like Glock and Roll, with a kind of provocative and even juvenile edge to it that never detracts from the darkness, the extremity, the brutality that is still expected of Sodom. And oh my god, ladies and gentlemen, bless Tom Angel Ripper and his dark, crusty, shriveled, blackened heart. I don't know how he's still able to sound so utterly devastating, so uncompromisingly violent after all these years, but Sodom is all the better for it. Now, if I wanted to sit here and nitpick, I could tell you that the album is somewhat generic, it's somewhat predictable, it's somewhat one-dimensional. I mean, let's be honest here. I don't think even the most die-hard Sodom fan could argue that this band is making anything especially imaginative or progressive by the standards of this genre, by the standards of what this band has already put out, for that matter. But you know what? We're not doing that. Not just because I really don't want to do that, but also because Sodom doesn't need to be any of those things. Yeah, it's nasty, it's greasy, it's not particularly healthy for you, but you know what? I don't care. It's called a guilty pleasure for a fucking reason, ladies and gentlemen. And just as much as I still love a good old-fashioned, nasty, greasy American cheeseburger, I still love me some nasty, greasy German thrash metal, and I still love me some nasty, greasy Sodom. So I'm actually gonna go with a 4 out of 5 on this. I think the last time I gave a thrash metal record a 4 out of 5 was Infest the Rat's Nest from King Gizzard last year. Oh boy, that should say a lot about where the genre's headed. It's fun, it's simple, it's heavy as holy hell, bloodthirsty, violent, and uncompromising, unapologetic from start to finish. The album never loses any of its steam, its edge, its hunger, its anger, and displays Sodom at arguably their best point in this modern era of thrash and extreme music. Sure, it's probably not going to win any awards for originality, but I don't care. I don't really think Sodom cares. I think we are all perfectly happy with these nasty, greasy thrash metal cheeseburgers as they are. 4 out of 5, a great thrash record, maybe one of the best thrash records of the year. Pull that stick out of your ass and stuff your fucking face. That is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.